Today, we're gonna dig through the best and worst relics of the media age. I don't know if that's a term. Are we in the media age? That would make sense.
Hold up, I need to change the intro. Awez, and today about reacting to The Lost Media Graveyard by Big Tug. The innovation of how we watch and how we see new media has changed so that drastically in about, I think, 20 years, 30 years, that honestly speaking, a lot of people, a lot of lighties don't even know what's a CD, bro. They only know iPad and laptops and all those things, bro. They don't know what it is. Let's reminisce on all the past ones that we saw once. So without further ado, comment, like, subscribe, let's go. It was an ass intro.
$4 a month and it's a lot of fun perks. Chris, why would you put that on the screen? You're ruining it. You're ruining it for everybody.
The 21st century. Never once have we ever had this much media at our fingertips. Without even leaving the house, you can experience practically anything through your beautiful little phones. From the greatest symphonies, to the finest cinemas, to boobs. So many boobs you can see. And also extratug.com, not as good as boobs, but I have to pitch it at least once in a video. But it wasn't always like this. Just a few decades ago, music fans and film buffs sank thousands of dollars into their collections of tapes, discs, and slightly different sized tapes and discs. The earliest record player, the phonograph, was invented in 1877 and was the first time humans could enjoy recorded music at home. Before then, the only way you could hear music is by buying a piano and then buying a guy who could play the piano. And it's not cool to buy a guy, but it was the time. Surprisingly, the journey from home pianos to crank-operated record players to handheld streaming devices only took a little over a century. And all we have to show for it is just a bunch of empty Circuit Cities, almost empty Best Buys, and just a bunch of liminal spaces that we don't know what to do with anymore. But as quickly as it came and went, physical media is back from the dead as a new generation discovers the joys of forgotten formats. So my Tuglets, it's time to dust off them stereos and them VCRs. Today, we're gonna dig through the best and worst relics of the media age. I don't know if that's a term. Are we in the media age? That would make sense.
That's so weird. So
To begin, nowadays, streaming is the #1 way most people enjoy TV and movies. 88% of US households subscribe to at least one streaming service, with each one fighting for your attention and cold hard cash by just being a little bit better than the worst one, in an industry that is currently worth $129 billion. But this is just the latest battle in a long tradition of home entertainment warfare, because before the streaming wars were there was the video format wars.
Oh,
Grandpa
yeah.
remembers. Grandpa, do you remember the wars? Did you die? The war between
yeah, that reminds me of that episode from I don't say Rick and Morty. Regular show. Yeah, I remember that. That episode was fire. Ever watched that episode? We watched that episode. That episode was fire.
VHS and Betamax came to define the first half of the 1980s, but it actually started in the 70s. Sony debuted the Betamax video cassette recorder, known as the VCR. Holy shit, that's what that stands for. I never knew that.
VCR.
In 1975. It cost a whopping $2,495, which amounts to like $15,000 when adjusted for inflation. So just for the cost of a 2019 gently used Toyota Yaris, you could have watching movies at home. Sounds like a good deal. A year later, JVC hit the market with their cheaper VHS version, which only cost around $1,000. So in today's money, that's like a heavily used Toyota Yaris. Those cars last, though. Everyone should look into the Yaris. What a good little car. Over the next decade, the two formats would battle for entertainment supremacy. Betamax held the upper hand in video and sound quality, while the inferior VCR had, a better price point and longer recording times. By 1980, the VHS had captured nearly 60% of the North American market.
I thought I heard something outside.
They were cheaper, rental store stocked more VHS than the other one, and the format also offered a lot more, boobs. We were talking about boobs earlier, and it was more boob focused. Ask anyone who was around in the 80s and 90s, and they'll tell you about the weird curtained off rooms in the back of movie rental shops, stocked with movies that covered the topics that I talk about on X-Ray Tug. And why did I say X-Ray Tug? X-Ray, read all about it. Why did I that up so bad. And Betamax just couldn't
fuck
keep
it up
up.
too, okay.
Couldn't stroke as fast. And 1988 had Sony waving the white flag when it produced its first VHS VCR. Wow, first Betamax, then the Berlin Wall. Both equally relevant in the 80s. Both huge moments in human history. Moving on to the next era of physical media wars, and to be honest, this one wasn't much of a war. More of a skirmish. Laserdisc came out in 1978, just 2 years after the VHS. Originally marketed as Laserdisco, which is such a more fun name. Everyone, just a little. Chris, make this fun. Make what I'm doing fun. Is it working? The Laserdisc was like the unholy love child of a vinyl record and a CD. The sound and video quality were both better than anything else on the market, but the discs were expensive, bulky, and needed to be flipped like an actual vinyl record, which is crazy. Also, the size of these things, Chris, put like I'm one human size and then put the disc next to me. That's a big disc. Laserdisc managed to stay in production until about 2001 thanks to its use in karaoke bars, but by 1997, DVDs were introduced and dominated. They weren't a huge step up from Laserdisc, but they were cheaper to produce and they weren't massive, so you could find an easy place to store them. And then a big boy player decided to back a winner.
DVDs had the 2000s on lock. Not on lock, like they had their foot on their neck, bro. Had the 2000s foot in their neck. Even when the internet was coming up, bro, DVDs were still the way to go, bro. Still the way to go. Now, bro, I mean, it's a sad time to be a DVD player. Nobody uses you except those
That's right.
Except those what they call them? Those bootleg motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? Do they still make those bootleg movies? Do they still make
Video format war equivalent to a WMD, the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 was released in 2000 with DVD compatibility, making its $299 price tag a steal because most DVD players at the time were going for like $400, $500. I don't know how PS2 did this. The PS2 would go on to be the highest selling console of all time. It sold like 160 million units, and it helped DVD sales peak in 2005 at over 16 billion. But the year after DVD sales hit their record, a new war started to take shape. A lot of war. Human. We can't stop it. In 2009, both HD DVDs and Blu-rays were released. Toshiba and Microsoft both backed HD DVD, while Blu-ray had support of Sony, Philips, Apple, Panasonic. Chris, edit out that little pause. Jesus Christ, don't let people know I'm stupid. Can't memorize 2 seconds of a script. The two formats were practically identical. The only difference being Blu-ray's slightly higher storage space and HD DVD players costing nearly half as much. This also happened to be the time where anti-piracy ads were everywhere, and they went hard as Chris, but you wouldn't steal a person, would ya? Some people think security measures helped tip the scales in Blu-ray's favor, especially as studios saw the pirated movies flooding file-sharing sites as an existential threat. It helped also that Sony once again threw its weight around by including a Blu-ray drive in the PlayStation 3. By mid-2007, Blu-ray was outselling HD DVD by 200%. I literally don't even remember HD DVD ever being a thing. I remember they were red and Blu-ray was blue. That's all I remember. And in 2008, Toshiba announced it would cease HD DVD player production. It was a decisive victory for Blu-ray. Okay, so the video wars were a tough time for this country, but the music formats had to be the toughest time for consumers. Today, over 100 million Americans pay for music streaming services like Spotify, and in 2024 alone, 4.8 trillion songs were streamed globally. But kicking out the jams used to require a little bit more than a Bluetooth connection or a god-dang aux cord. It required a constant carousel of formats that, for some reason, all seemed to break if you played them more than once. It was a disaster. Let's start off with the humble vinyl, the thing that your homie still collects in the most douchebaggery of ways. The first 12-inch vinyl LP was made by Columbia Records in 1948. It used the same technological advances in frequency recording that the Royal Navy used to track submarines during World War II. And what was this absolute banger of an album that bridged the gap between generations listening to music forever? It was Mendelssohn's Concerto in E minor by the New York Philharmonic. Okay, that's kind of sucks. But to be fair, back then music was not good. It was 1948. What do you expect? The ensuing decade saw an explosion of musical creativity and innovations in recording techniques. It culminated with vinyl's peak in 1977 when 344 million records were sold in the US. Of course, there were a lot of problems with records, and honestly more problems than positives that came with these flimsy little wax things. For one, they're extremely fragile. Even a little bit of dust could make a record skip. And even playing a record too often would make it degrade to the point beyond repair, which makes sense. If you think about it, if you use anything too much, it should break. But like, I hate the fact that you could listen to music so much that you ruin it. That sucks so bad. Plus, each side of the album could only hold around 22 minutes of music, so you were constantly getting up to flip the record over. Records were obviously destined to fail. It's wax with grooves that required a diamond needle to play. It's witchcraft, and witchcraft should always fail. One of the vinyl's biggest drawbacks was its portability. It's a big bitch that you put in the corner of the room. So 8-track tapes tried to fix this in 1964. Bill Lear, the inventor of the Learjet, which was one of the first private jets ever commercially available. Kind of a douchebag name. I hate when people name things after themselves, especially with a name like Lear. Relax. But he developed 8-tracks with the help of companies like Ford, GM, Ampex, RCA, and Motorola. You know, the manufacturing Avengers. You get them together, the world's gonna change. And soon, many other car companies followed suit, and it was banging to have an 8-track in your whip. Everyone into hoopty, you gotta have an 8-track. But much like everything else, soon they were immediately obsolete. Sorry you spent all that money on that 6th station, but we gotta keep pushing. It was probably because of the tiny drawback that they were super fragile and terrible. Truly nothing about the 8-track was good for music fans. Their sound quality was inferior to vinyl, and the tapes were really sensitive to heat and they would warp. And what gets really hot in the summer? Is any other fellow toddlers out there? The car seat. And even though you now had some freedom to choose your own music, you couldn't rewind an 8-track. You had to sit around and wait for it to loop. But 8-tracks had rivals. Their skinnier, sexier cousins, the cassette player. Cassettes and 8-tracks shared a few years of overlap, but once Sony released the Walkman in 1979, it was all over. Cassettes were not only easy to...
Dog, I so want a Walkman, bro. I just want one for like the aesthetics. I ain't gonna lie to you. I've always wanted one, dog. Ever since I watched what's this 1980 movies, dog. I've always like, yo, who cares about an iPad? Not an iPad. I'm saying an iPad. And I. You know what? This just forget what I said. iPod. Yeah, who cares about iPod, bro? Give me freaking walk. You know what? I don't know why I'm talking. I should shut up. I don't understand what I'm saying right now. Yeah.
Listen to on the go, but they had the ability to rewind. You could go back, use a pencil eraser, spin that bitch. Also, the next time you get mad at your parents for not understanding what AI is or how to use Alexa, the biggest advancement in music technology they lived through was the concept of rewinding. They're f***ing old, give them a break. So that, coupled with the prominence of the dual cassette deck boombox, tapes took on a life of their own. Music fans could create duplicates of their favorite albums, make mixtapes of their favorite songs, or literally go to any concert and hold up a cassette player and hit record, and then just make a bootleg tape of your favorite band. You could just do that. By 1990, $3.5 billion of cassettes were sold in the US. But the format would shockingly fall from grace extremely fast, and by 2003 they were practically non-existent. Again, this was because of one absolutely itty-bitty tiny flaw, and that was the fact that they would degrade the more you listen to them, because they have magnetic tape and it wouldn't work it was bad. Or sometimes it would unspool and become unplayable, which sucks if you'd play for something and then all of a sudden it would puke its guts out and then you just have a bunch of fun ribbon to play with. But to qualm all my worries came the CDs. When CDs were introduced in 1982, they were the answer to nearly all the drawbacks of previous musical formats. We finally had something that would make sense to listen to. While audiophiles might look down on the CD's digital format, it was designed to exceed the hearing capabilities of the human ear. These discs represent the best audio humans can distinguish without formal training. So not only did they sound great, but they held tons of music on these puppies. While originally designed to hold up to an hour of jams, the disc diameter was increased to accommodate a complete recording of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. So sadly, classical music changes the format once again. I wish they would stop.
Why?
I wish they would stop so I don't have to keep talking about Beethoven and his deaf ass.
Let's be honest. Why do people still like Beethoven that much? I understand, yes, it's a classical, yes, it's cool, but they all seem to be too into it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, Or maybe there's just a lot of old people in the world that have money, that can make movies and just show this to us. Basically force feed it out down our guts. Maybe that's the case.
By the 90s, CDs were the default format for most consumers, peaking in 2000 with $13.2 billion in revenue. And honestly, CDs are kind of the gold standard. They weren't replaced by a superior format, they were replaced by convenience and a digital that was just a click of a button instead of buying a CD. They were the best of the best. We are just lazy. if that makes sense. Of course, they weren't without their drawbacks, which mostly involved the case. CDs came in jewel cases that would easily chip, scratch, and even shatter. I remember being a dumb child and taking a CD case and bending it backwards and watching all of the pieces of plastic explode all over me in the back seat of my dad's car. I even remember the album. It was Forever Blue by what's his name? What a wicked game we played. Chris, put him up. What's his name? Maybe did a bad thing. Chris Isaac. There we go. But even CDs could get damaged after
The irony in that.
repeated listenings with something called disc rot. Disc rot is what happens when chemicals deteriorate the surface of a CD, making it unreadable by the laser. So, okay, again, we want to listen to our music. So how is it that they keep giving us formats that are doomed to fail? I guess that's life, right? A slow march to our own demise. God, that's dark, but it's music, baby. Nirvana. Of course, none of these issues led to the downfall of CDs. It was MP3s and file sharing that eventually decimated the market. In the US, sales of CDs eventually fell 95% from the year 2000 peak as music piracy and digital downloads dominated how we listened to music in the 2010s. But you might think Betamax and 8-tracks were some of the most doomed to fail kinds of media consumption you could be a part of, but that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to obsolete media. Some of them put up a good fight, but many of them were practically dead on arrival. I don't know how much we could put in of the Fall Out Boy song Dead on Arrival, so Chris, play as much of Dead on Arrival by Fall Out Boy we can before we get demonetized. Thank you. That wasn't worth the bit at all. Don't even have to put that in. Which brings me to my next segment, a little game I like to call Which Lasted Longer. We're bringing back game shows. I'm going to describe a physical media format and a dumb thing, and you're going to guess in the comments or write just out loud to whoever's next to you which one you think lasted longer. It's going to be a fun game. We're going to have fun. To begin, we're going to start with the mini disc. That's a real thing that existed. I bet you didn't know that. Introduced in 1992, these were essentially a mix between a cassette tape, CD, and a floppy disk. They were primarily made to replace the recording capabilities of a cassette with the
I used it for PSP. It was very heavy when it comes to PSP.
of a CD. The mini disc tried to bridge the gap between analog tape duplication and digital technology, but ultimately only appealed to tech-savvy consumers and never really took off. Also, for what it's worth, this is stupid. This is a stupid little thing. So, what lasted longer? The mini disc or America's involvement in the Vietnam War? Jesus Christ, that's dark. One is a dumb little format for music. One redefined American culture for forever. My guess is Vietnam. Let's find out together. Survey says the mini disc. How is that f***ing possible? America was in Vietnam for 19 years and 5 months, which is a long time, but I assumed longer. And it looks like the last mini disc players were manufactured in 2013, giving the format a lifespan of 21 years. So we're all stupid. I'm sorry for misleading you that hard, but let's move on to our next contestant. Digital Video Express. What is this, you ask? Better known as DivX, it was a DVD-based rental format created by Circuit City in June of 1998. The big idea behind these discs were that they were basically a different version of renting videos. Customers would buy the discs from Circuit City for $4.99, and after 2 days, the disc would become unplayable. The only real upside here would be that you didn't have to worry about coming back to bring back your rentals. But the benefits paled in comparison to the disadvantages. One, you needed a dedicated player to play a DivX, which is stupid as hell, and it needed an internal modem, which would allow DivX to read a credit card, authorize viewings, and also track your viewing habits. Who the f wants any of that in a DVD player? Consumers had immediate concerns over DivX machines' widespread access to their information because obviously, and making matters worse, Sony and Warner refused to release their movies on DivX to protect the growing DVD market. So, what lasted longer? DivX or Avril Lavigne's marriage to Nickelback singer Chad Kroeger? Which one do you think? Well, even though celebrity romances are usually doomed from the start, I'm gonna give it to Avril Lavigne and Chad Kroeger. Got that name, but I would assume, look at them. Match made in heaven. I didn't even know they were together at one point, so hopefully it lasted longer than the DivX. And survey says, Big Tug's right, you doubted me. Some of you dipshits, I could see it in the comments down there. Tucker, that definitely the DivX lasted longer. You're f***ing stupid and ugly. Lavigne and Kroeger managed to keep the flame alive for 2 years, and DivX only lasted a year before Circuit City pulled the plug. Those DVDs would come and some of them wouldn't even work, and it's crazy that you would have chemicals that would ruin a CD, and also the amount of waste you're just making for no f***ing reason? Crazy. All right, moving on. The UMD for the PSP. I love the PSP. I'm sad they didn't.
Oh, okay. This is for the PSP, not the other thing. Okay.
keep doing those. When PSP was released in December of 2004, Sony thought it would use the same strategy as the PS2 and PS3 and create widespread adoption of a new media format, the Universal Media Disc, aka the UMD. Since the PSP was a handheld device, I don't think their goal was to replace DVDs more than it was to make the PSP feel like a home console in the palm of your hands. Still, hundreds of movie titles were released for the UMD, even though standalone players were never created, which seems like a bad decision financially. This was purely a way for gamers to watch movies on the go. Because the product was inferior, the UMD offered fewer features that DVDs did at the same price. And while the UMD and the PSP came out of the gate strong, with most major film companies releasing their titles on the format, it quickly crashed because studios were not making their money back, and obviously no shit. In 2006, Universal and Paramount pulled their support of the format, spelling the beginning of the end for the UMD. So, what lasted longer, the UMD or Barack Obama's presidency? Obama had 2 terms, PSP seemed pretty much destined to fail. Gotta go with Obama here. Gotta go with Obama. Always gotta go with Obama. It looks like December 2011 release of Hangover Part 2 was the last UMD title, giving the format a 7-year lifespan. Obama for the win.
Okay.
Always bet on the Obama. Okay, for the final round, we're busting out one of the weirdest, most obscure formats ever.
I'm better betting,
hit
guys.
clips. Not mini clip, not that game. We're talking about hit clips. Honestly, calling these a media format is a little misleading. These were keychains that played music. Essentially, toys just trying to capitalize on the bubblegum Y2K era vibe. Tiger Electronics introduced hit clips in 1999, which were tiny memory cards on a keyring that featured a minute-long clip of a song. You couldn't even hear the full song, just a clip of the chorus. Dog shit. Again, I know this was for kids, but it does feel a little unnecessary to put training wheels on music. But as you might expect, most of HitClip's offerings were from pop artists like NSYNC, Britney Spears, and the Backstreet Boys. And for what they were, they sold pretty well. They moved 300 million units. Sorry, 30 million. 30 million. Okay, that was a little bit too much. I should have known. So, what lasted longer? HitClips or Carson Daly's run on MTV? You kids even know who the Carson Daly is? Carson Daly was an iconic host on MTV during the hit clip era. And I don't know, I'm thinking his popularity is too big for someone who was just on to MTV for a year or two. So I'm gonna say Carson Daly's run on MTV lasted longer than hit clips. That's what I'm thinking. And according to my notes, Daly started on MTV in 1997 and left in 2003, so it looks like he beat out hit clip by 2 years. They were in production from 1999 to 2003.
Okay. Well. Wow. I don't think I'm gonna keep on making big talk videos. Cause like, I don't know, but do you even watch these videos? Cause like I feel like I'm the one who's really watching them. So I'm gonna see on the stats on analytics, and see if you'll even watch these things. Cause like I feel like whenever I post like a big talk video, no one really watches it except me, which is sad about that, but it's fine. Excuse me. So without further ado, thank you for watching the rest of the video. Holy frick, what the heck? Thank you for chilling with your own. Comment, like, subscribe. And until next time, I've been the Lost Owen. We out.